GPT 5.4 just dropped, and this is not one of those fake minor update releases where the version number changes, the benchmark chart gets prettier, and nothing in your workflow actually improves. This one matters. It truly does. Because OpenAI is not pitching GPT 5.4 as just a smarter chatbot. They're pitching it as their most capable model for professional work. A model built for coding, documents, spreadsheets, presentations, deep web research, and long multi-step agent workflows. And that changes the conversation immediately. So the real question is not, did OpenAI release another big model? The real question is, did they just release the first model that genuinely feels built for serious work at scale? And if they did, what does that mean for Gemini and Grok? Because for the last few months, Google has been pushing Gemini 3.1 Pro as its model for complex multimodal reasoning and precise multi-step execution, while xAI has been leaning hard into Grok's live search, tool use, and reasoning story with Grok 4 and Grok 4 Fast. Those are not weak competitors. They're strong, credible alternatives with very different strengths. So in this video, I'm going to break GPT 5.4 down the only way that actually matters. What's new, what the real benchmarks say, what changed in practice, where it looks dangerous for competitors, and where Gemini and Grok still absolutely matter. And I'm also going to answer the question smart viewers actually care about. If you already use ChatGPT, Gemini, or Grok, what gets meaningfully better today, and what is still just marketing? Hi, I'm Maxim, and welcome back to AI Observer, where we cover the biggest AI news, tools, breakthroughs, robots, and models without the fluff. Let's get into it. First, what actually launched? OpenAI officially released GPT 5.4 in ChatGPT, the API and codecs, and also launched GPT 5.4 Pro for users who want maximum performance on hard tasks. In ChatGPT, it appears as GPT 5.4 Thinking, and OpenAI is very clearly positioning it as its most capable and efficient frontier model for professional work. That wording matters because it tells you exactly who this model is for. Not casual chat first, work first. And OpenAI's framing is also very deliberate. GPT 5.4 combines their recent progress in reasoning, coding, and agentic workflows into one mainline model. In other words, this is supposed to be the model where a lot of their separate wins start coming together. It also brings in the coding strength of GPT 5.3 codecs while improving performance across tools, software environments, spreadsheets, documents, and presentations. That alone already tells you this release is different. Because for a while, the frontier model race has felt fragmented. One model was better at coding. Another was stronger on multimodal reasoning. Another had better context or lower cost. Another had live web access. GPT 5.4 is OpenAI's attempt to say, what if one model becomes the default serious work option? Now let's talk specs, the ones that actually matter. According to OpenAI's official model page, GPT 5.4 supports 1,050,000 tokens of context and 128,000 max output tokens. It accepts text and image as input and supports reasoning effort levels from default up through X high. GPT 5.4 Pro keeps the same context and max output size, but OpenAI says some requests can take several minutes because Pro is designed for tougher problems and heavier compute. That context number is important, but not because big number equals automatic win. The important part is what OpenAI is doing with it. OpenAI says GPT 5.4 is their first general-purpose model with native state-of-the-art computer use capabilities, meaning it can operate computers, work across apps, and handle long-horizon workflows as an agent. They also say it improves tool search, helping agents find and use the right tools more efficiently, and that GPT 5.4 is their most token-efficient reasoning model yet compared with GPT 5.2. That is a huge deal, because this shifts the pitch from ask me a question to give me a task, and that's where the AI race is going. Not best chatbot, not prettiest benchmark tweet, not funniest personality. The real race now is, which model becomes the most useful layer for real work? Can it read a messy screenshot? Can it use tools without falling apart? Can it stay coherent across a long chain of steps? Can it build something useful, not just say clever things? That is why GPT 5.4 matters. And now we get to the part most viewers actually came for, the new features that feel real. OpenAI put special emphasis on improving GPT 5.4 for spreadsheets, presentations, and documents. On OpenAI's internal benchmark for spreadsheet modeling tasks, GPT 5.4 scored 87.3%, compared with 68.4% for GPT 5.2. On presentation evaluation prompts, human raters preferred GPT 5.4's presentations 68% of the time over GPT 5.2 because of stronger aesthetics, more visual variety, and better use of image generation. This is a bigger story than it sounds. Because most people still think of frontier AI in terms of coding demos or benchmark screenshots. But if you're actually using these tools in work, one of the biggest pain points is boring, high-value output. Decks, models, docs, analysis, revisions, formatting, consistency. And OpenAI is directly attacking that layer. Not, wow, look what it can say. More like, can it produce a decent spreadsheet, a better deck, and a cleaner document without me redoing half of it? That's a much more commercially important question. OpenAI also says GPT-5.4 is their most factual model yet, on a set of de-identified prompts where users had flagged factual errors. OpenAI says GPT-5.4's individual claims were 33% less likely to be false, and full responses were 18% less likely to contain any errors, relative to GPT-5.2. That matters because once models become more agentic, factual reliability becomes more important, not less. A model that confidently makes one mistake in a long workflow can still break the whole workflow. Now let's move to the most underappreciated part of this release: computer use and vision. OpenAI says GPT-5.4 is their first mainline general-purpose model with native computer use capability, and on OS World verified GPT-5.4 scored 75.0% compared to 47.3% for GPT-5.2 and even above the human performance number. On Web Arena verified, OpenAI reports 67.3% for GPT-5.4 versus 65.4% for GPT-5.2, and on Online Mind 2 Web, GPT-5.4 scored 92.8% using screenshot-based observations alone. This is one of those moments where the benchmark numbers do matter, because they connect directly to use case. This model isn't just watching, it's doing. If those results hold up in practice, GPT-5.4 is not just better at answering questions about interfaces, it is better at working through interfaces. That means website workflows, software navigation, repetitive office tasks, tool orchestration, browser actions, screen-based automation. And that is exactly where AI agents stop being a slide deck concept and start becoming an actual product layer. Vision also got a real upgrade. On MMMU Pro, OpenAI reports 81.2% without tools for GPT-5.4 versus 79.5% for GPT-5.2 and 82.1% with tools versus 80.4% for GPT-5.2. OpenAI also introduced an original image input detail mode starting with GPT-5.4, supporting full fidelity perception up to 10.24 million pixels, or a 6,000 pixel maximum dimension, whichever is lower. That sounds technical, but here's the practical translation. If you work with screenshots, tables, dashboards, diagrams, small text, or dense visual information, GPT-5.4 is being built to do a better job when fidelity matters. And that's a quiet but very important upgrade, because some of the most annoying AI failures happen when models misread what's right in front of them. Now let's hit coding. On SWE Bench Pro, OpenAI shows GPT-5.4 at 57.7%, above GPT-5.2 at 55.6%, and slightly above GPT-5.3 Codex at 56.8%. But on Terminal Bench 2.0, GPT-5.3 Codex still leads with 77.3%, while GPT-5.4 scores 75.1% and GPT-5.2 sits much lower at 62.2%. That is exactly the kind of nuance I like to see, because it means the real story is not GPT-5.4 destroys everything in every coding category. The real story is smarter. GPT-5.4 looks like the stronger general professional model, while GPT-5.3 Codex still has a real argument in some terminal-heavy or specialized coding scenarios. That's premium analysis, not fanboy nonsense. Now let's compare this to Gemini and Grok the right way. Google's official Gemini docs say Gemini 3.1 Pro Preview is designed to refine the Gemini 3 Pro line with better thinking, improved token efficiency, and a more grounded, factually consistent experience. And that it is optimized for software engineering behavior, agentic workflows, precise tool use, and reliable multi-step execution. Google also lists a 1,048,85576 input token limit and 65,536 output tokens, with support for text, image, video, audio, and PDF input. Google's own developer guide says Gemini 3.1 Pro is best for complex tasks requiring broad world knowledge and advanced reasoning across modalities. So if you're asking, does Gemini still matter after GPT-5.4? Absolutely yes. Gemini still has a very strong case if your workflow is highly multimodal, deeply tied into Google's ecosystem, or you want a model that was explicitly refined around grounded multi-step execution. That's a real strength. Grok is different. xAI's official positioning for Grok 4 emphasizes native tool use and real-time search integration, while Grok 4 Fast adds state-of-the-art cost efficiency, web and X search capabilities, and a 2 million token context window with a unified architecture. That blends reasoning and non-reasoning modes. xAI's docs also note that Grok 4 is a reasoning model by default. So Grok's angle is not identical to either OpenAI or Google. Grok's advantage is not best spreadsheet model or best deck builder. Its strongest public angle is more like live search, current information feel, tool use, speed, cost options, and a more internet-native product identity. So here's the smartest way to compare all three right now. If your priority is professional work output, documents, spreadsheets, presentations, coding, tool-heavy workflows, long task chains, GPT 5.4 just became one of the strongest default choices. Documents, spreadsheets, presentations, coding, tool-heavy workflows, long task chains, GPT 5.4 just became one of the strongest default choices in the market. If your priority is multimodal depth plus Google ecosystem fit, Gemini 3.1 Pro still looks extremely relevant. If your priority is live search flavor, current discourse energy, and XAI's search and tool story, Grok still matters a lot. That is why the headline is not "Everyone else is dead." The headline is "OpenAI just made the professional work lane a lot harder for everyone else." Now let's talk practical tests, because this is the part I would personally run first. If I were testing GPT 5.4 today, I would start with 3 use cases. First, the knowledge work stress test. Give it a messy brief supporting files, a spreadsheet task, a slide request, and a written summary, all in one workflow. This is exactly the kind of output OpenAI says GPT 5.4 was improved for, and it's where the GDP val, Office QA, spreadsheet, and presentation upgrades are supposed to show up. Second, the computer use workflow test. Ask it to navigate a real site or software flow from screenshots, complete a browser task, or operate a desktop process. If the OS World and Web Arena results reflect reality, this should be one of the clearest places where GPT 5.4 feels different. Third, the long context plus tool use test. Drop in a huge context pack, ask for a multi-step plan, then force the model to use tools, revise itself, and stay consistent. This is where the 1.05M context window, tool search, and token efficiency story either feel real or collapse into marketing. And this is where the real competitive pressure shows up. Because if GPT 5.4 can do those 3 things reliably, then Gemini and Grok do have a problem. OpenAI has now put together a more complete, serious work package. Giant context, long output, stronger factuality, spreadsheet doc presentation focus, better web research. And a pro tier for deeper tasks. That is a hard package to ignore, but I want to end with the part that matters most long-term. The deeper story here is not just GPT 5.4 itself. The deeper story is that the frontier model war is becoming less about one-shot answers and more about compound workflows. The winners in this next phase are not simply the models that sound smartest in a demo. They're the models that can hold context, use tools, interpret screens, browse deeply, stay factual. That is what OpenAI is signaling with GPT 5.4. That is what Google is chasing with Gemini 3.1 Pro. That is what XAI is pushing toward with Grok's search and tool use ecosystem. So my verdict is simple. GPT 5.4 is not just another release. It looks like one of the clearest attempts yet to define the professional AI category around real work. The benchmarks are stronger, the product positioning is sharper, and for anyone building with AI agents, research workflows, or knowledge work pipelines, this is a release you cannot ignore. That does not mean Gemini is irrelevant. It does not mean Grok is irrelevant. It does mean the pressure just went up. So now I want your take. If you had GPT 5.4 open right now, what would you test first? Coding, documents, deep research, spreadsheets, computer use, or agent workflows? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more breakdowns like this, real AI news, real benchmark context, real model comparisons, subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next one.